Have you ever been so lost in a book that you completely lose track of time? You just have to know what happens next? Well, what if I told you that the very thing that keeps us glued to the page is something one of the greatest writers of all time found kind of frustrating? Today, let's dig into the novel's secret ingredient with the brilliant E.M. Forster as our guide.
So, let me ask you something. Think about every single novel you've ever read. I mean, everything. Fantasy epics, quiet drama, sci-fi adventures. What is the one thing they all have in common? Now, the answer might seem really obvious, but according to Forster, it's how you answer that reveals everything about what you really want from a book. And that brings us to our first big idea, this sort of reluctant agreement. Because you see, pretty much everyone agrees on what a novel fundamentally does, but it's the tone in their voice when they say it that shows this huge difference in how we feel about it. And here's Forster's own answer. Just listen to it. Yes, oh dear yes, the novel tells a story. That's not a big, triumphant yes, is it? It's a sigh. It's almost a confession. He knows it's true, but that oh dear yes is just dripping with this amazing regret, like he wishes the answer was something a little more profound. To really break this down, Forster does something brilliant. He imagines three different people answering our question. First, you've got the motor bus driver. He's super chill, a bit vague. Yeah, I suppose it kind of tells a story. Then there's the golfer, all aggression and certainty. Give me a good story. That's what I want. And then you have the intellectual, which is basically Forster himself, with that drooping, sad voice. Same answer, totally different worlds.
And here he is, the man himself. E.M. Forster was a literary giant. He wrote masterpieces like A Passage to India. And yet, this master storyteller felt that the most fundamental part of his craft, the story itself, was something you just had to put up with, not something to celebrate. And that conflict, that's the key to this whole thing. Okay, so this is where things get a little weird and totally brilliant. Forster argues that the basic story, the what happens next part, isn't some high-minded art form. No. He says it's something way more primitive, almost biological. In fact, he compares it to a tapeworm. Yeah. He does not pull any punches. He calls story a low atavistic form. Atavistic just means it's a throwback to our ancient ancestors. So what he's saying is our need for a story isn't some refined taste, it's a primal urge we've inherited from our caveman days.
And to prove his point, he paints this incredible picture. Imagine our earliest ancestors, these shockheads gaping around the campfire, totally wiped out after a long day of hunting mammoths. What on earth could keep these exhausted people awake? It's not going to be beautiful language or deep character arcs. Nope, it's just one simple, urgent question.
This is it. The engine of every story ever told. What would happen next? It's a question that's literally baked into our DNA for survival. You gotta know what's coming. The storyteller who could keep the tribe hooked on that question had all the power. And if they couldn't, well, Forster jokes the audience would either fall asleep or kill him. So this sequence of events is the backbone of the novel. But that's when Forster gives us his much cheekier and honestly unforgettable analogy. He says it's not a backbone, it's a tapeworm. You know, a long, simple, kind of gross organism that just keeps going. It's a wild comparison, but it perfectly captures his idea that the story is absolutely essential, but also incredibly basic.
So just how powerful is this primal need to know what happens next? I mean, really, for proof of its raw life-or-death power, Forster points to the ultimate case study, the legendary storyteller, Scheherazade.
Now, don't get me wrong, Scheherazade was an absolutely brilliant novelist. Forster lists all her incredible talents. She had beautiful descriptions, complex morality, amazing characters. She had the whole literary package. By any standard, she was a genius.
But you know what? None of that mattered to the murderous king who was planning to execute her at sunrise. Her genius, her deep insights, her lovely prose, they were all useless. Her life came down to her mastery of one single primitive tool, pure, uncut suspense. She had to make that king need to know what happens next.
And this was her weapon. This one simple line, repeated for 1,001 nights. Every single time the story gets to the best part, she sees the sun come up and just stops talking. She leaves the king hanging, that primitive part of his brain screaming for a resolution. He couldn't kill her because he just had to find out what happened next. That, for Forster, is the ultimate mic drop.
So, okay,
If the simple story is just this primitive tapeworm, what makes a great novel something so much more? Well, this is where we get to the absolute heart of Forster's argument. A great novel has to serve two masters. It has to juggle the life we live in time with the life we live by values.
So first, let's be super clear. When Forster says story, he means one thing: a narrative of events arranged in their time sequence. That's it. Simple. Tuesday follows Monday, you eat dinner after you eat breakfast, it's just the tick-tock of the clock.
And this is the big contrast. On one hand, you have the life and time. That's the story's job. It's measured by the clock, and it only cares about what happens next. But on the other hand, you have the life by values, and that's the job of the novel. It's not measured in hours, it's measured in importance, in intensity. Think about your own memory. It's not a timeline, right? It's a highlight reel of emotional peaks. This life asks a different question. What is it worth?
And if that still feels a little abstract, Forster just nails it with this one. Perfect sentence. I only saw her for 5 minutes, but it was worth it. Boom, there it is. 5 minutes, that's the clock, the life and time, but it was worth it. That's the value, the intensity, the meaning. A great novel has to give you both. It needs the clock, but it has to deliver the worth it.
So you might be wondering, if the story's clock is so primitive, couldn't a really brilliant author just get rid of it? Write a novel that's all about values? Well, many have tried. But as Forster shows us, you can't escape time that easily.
Forster brings up some of literature's greatest rebels who tried to do just that. You have Emily Bronte, who tried to bury the clock under the drama of Wuthering Heights. You have Lawrence Stern, who turned it completely upside down in Tristram Shandy. And of course, there's Marcel Proust, who was constantly messing with the hands of the clock, jumping between past and present.
And yet, for all their genius, none of them could actually break the clock. Forster says a novelist has to hold on to that thread of story, that pesky little tapeworm. Because if you deny time completely, your book becomes, well, gibberish. The reader needs that simple what happens next to cling to, even while you're doing all sorts of clever things.
So where does this all leave us? After calling the story a lowbrow, primitive tapeworm, why is it still the one thing a novel can't live without? How do we square this circle?
And this is Forster's beautiful final point. The story is a paradox. It is both the lowest and simplest of literary organisms, that ancient campfire DNA. But at the same time, it is the highest factor common to all novels. It's the one ingredient they all must have. It's the ugly, essential foundation that allows all the beautiful, complex things, the characters, the ideas, the values to grow. Without the worm, the whole thing falls apart.
So I want to leave you with this. The next time you're deep in a book, just pause for a second and ask yourself, what part of me is reading right now? Is it the ancient cave dweller desperate to know what happens next? Or is it the part of you that's searching for meaning, for value? Are you following the relentless tick-tock of the story's clock, or are you listening to the novel's beating heart? Thanks to Forster, you'll now know how to listen for both.